I think this is a absolutely great initiative done by SPH, and the reasons for them are not very hard to find. Number one, we know for a fact that the consumers nowadays is hugely fragmented across media. So that's the primary challenge we face as advertising agencies, and the clients we know face that problem. The second is the media is becoming expensive and therefore fragmented to kind of follow the consumers where the consumers are. And that has created a big problem in trying to create campaigns and address communication challenges in an integrated fashion. There's the days of using one media or just two media to reach out a specific target or to get them to do a specific task at the end of the campaign is over. What we need now is to make sure that we are able to reach out to them across multiple touch points in an integrated fashion. And we have been increasingly communicating this to our clients as the only way forward now and in the future. And it's really great that we have someone like SPH who's now offering an integrated solution which helps us and helps our clients. The concept of integrated media is not new. We have been hearing about this for the last few years, ever since this issue became very prominent among clients. But to get a media publisher to integrate its offerings hasn't been easy. There have been different reasons for that. So one is there's simply not that many assets which one media vendor has at his disposal, which will be meaningful enough. So what I mean to say is one of them will either have just one media like print or outdoor or digital, but not all three together. The second is that even if they have, they are not big enough assets which could make any meaningful contribution. So for someone like SPH, which has scale, which has large assets which do make real impact with the consumers, be willing to do this kind of integration is commendable. And for someone, organization of the size of SPH to do it is a big trend setter. It changes the game completely, and I think not only does it make the task easier for agencies, I think suddenly clients will find that advertising has again becoming more effective the way it used to be, 20 years back. Well, it's all very fine to be proposing an integrated solution, and I think both agencies and clients now want it. But what is that one thing which will integrate everything? For any campaign to work, we know it has to be platform neutral. And to drive platform neutrality, the one single thing which brings it together is going to be the big idea. So ideas are at the core of any communication campaign, which will bring all the assets into one seamless solution, which seems as one unique message for a consumer, and which is a lot more effective in driving a specific objective for a client. So what I'm trying to say is, without the big idea, there's no integration. And the fact that SPH understands that in order to drive its assets as one single solution piece, it has to have an idea at its core is, I think, showing that they know how the whole integration process works. So it's not about someone else trying to figure out how to integrate different assets. It's not about just making them look and feel the same or having the same tagline running across different assets. It's about one big idea which can manifest itself through different platforms, and it's almost like a human being. One asset could be the hands of the campaign, another one could be the head, another one could be the legs, the other one could be the body, and it all becomes as one for a consumer. This is something we have been discussing and have huge amounts of discussion with clients on when is it that digital is going to replace traditional media. And I, for one, strongly believe that it will never happen, primarily because consumers are not behaving in that fashion. They do consume all kinds of media simultaneously. Yes, their attention is now fragmented across media. They can multitask, but at the end of the day, they are consuming multiple touch points irrespective of whether they are digital, below the line, above the line, or what have you. So in the case of this discussion we have, argument we have, digital versus traditional media, I think both feed off each other. I have never come across any big brand which has been built on the back of digital media, and I don't think that's going to happen. Digital media is based on the premise customers know what they are looking for, and customers really only know what to look for once they have been made aware of that product or have engaged with that product or brand, which happens in the real world, and that real world is through the traditional media. So that's number one. The second is there could be conversations through the advent of social media, conversations among consumers, between brands and consumers, which are initiated in the digital sphere, in the digital world. But in order for them to gain credibility, they need to come back somewhere in the traditional media space, because there is credibility which is associated with traditional media, which I don't see being associated with the digital media in the near future. It may happen sometime 20 years, 30 years later, but not immediately. And that credibility again is something which digital media cannot do without, and therefore the two have to come together and come in an integrated fashion. So for me, the two have to work hand in hand. One can't do without the other, and I would say for digital media it would be suicidal literally to go without digital media backing it. Well, I think SPH clearly going through this integrated route seems to understand what's best for clients and what's best for its consumers. I think the first and foremost for any of this integration to work is the management philosophy. And I have interacted with senior people at SPH, and I think they understand, and there's a huge appreciation that this is the only way a company of its size and its status can continue to succeed in the future. So that's number one. The second is they have the right assets. So they are very strong in your traditional print, both press and magazines. They're extremely powerful in the outdoor medium, and they were the pioneers in digital media in this part of the world. And they have electronic media as well. So that pretty much rounds up the assets they have. Last but not least is they have the people. People on the ground who can deliver the goods. And that happens because they have placed teams not just to think through a solution, they have things which can execute those solutions. So how to get an integrated idea through creative teams, how to get ideation into real ads, how to make sure everything is synced together, the campaign is all organized together. There are lots of gaps which could happen while executing a campaign. We know enough situations when all great ideas have fallen flat when there's been no execution. Steve Jobs has shown us the way that every good idea has to be followed through in detail, and that detailing I think is there in SPH's DNA, and therefore I think they have absolutely the right partner to lead this integration thinking forward. For the last year or so, social media has become the big buzzword in Singapore especially, and of course it's been growing thanks to Facebook, thanks to LinkedIn, in a big way the last few years. I think for social media, in order for it to transcend from the realms of being purely gossip and purely things which are interesting for today and for tomorrow, but then people forget about after that, it has to take support of traditional media to make it something worth discussing, to make it a point worth considering, pondering over, and make it into a debate. I think that's the real value of social media. So whether it's a debate about an issue, a debate about a brand, or a debate about a trend, which is for anything to last and have real weight, it needs to have, again, the point I talked about, credibility, which again comes through traditional media. So therefore, if it doesn't take the support of traditional media, it will always remain in the realm of people who are rebellious, people who are just no one wants to listen to them except a few fellow Facebook friends, and that's not something which can be taken very seriously. In order to be made something more impactful, in order for people to consider it something which affects their lives, I think it needs to have a broader platform, and therefore traditional media comes into play. I think if we rely purely on digital social media, yes, it has its value, but I think it's very, very limited. But it's a good place to find out what are the things which affect people's lives. Small grouses, small complaints which could manifest and become bigger in the future. So it's good to kind of get that initial feel. But in order for it to kind of have something more meaningful, again, traditional has to play a very strong part and has to be integral to social media. And just a case in point, we know of issues which have been taken seriously even before the advent of digital social media has been the forum page in Straits Times. And they have been real issues, and they have been something which people have been very passionate about, and parties affected by it, whether it's companies or the government or people's associations, they've all then kind of got roped in and done something to solve those issues or address those issues. So it has to have that platform at some point of its journey in order to be taken more seriously.